Therefore, if you are doing an imaging study, like an MR, CT, what, an ultrasound, which of the two conditions stops at the insertion of the tendon? The Graves or the myositis? The Graves, because it's only the expansion of the interstitium by the glycosaminoglycans, and you can't get it inside tendon. You understand the physiological reason for your answer, okay? This way you don't have to memorize which is which, all right? You understand that? You understand the pathology, you understand everything, except refraction. There's no pathologic basis for refraction, I'm so sorry. Okay, so, if you're seeing inflammation inside the lacrimal gland, one thing is, could this be pseudotumor confined to the lacrimal gland? If we do that, we call it dacryoadenitis. And if you get fibrous connective tissue, you call it sclerosing dacryoadenitis. Sometimes you will see idiopathic orbital inflammation that affects Tenon's capsule posteriorly. And some people will believe that this is the pathologic equivalent of posterior scleritis, but this is for a whole other talk. I want to get a little bit of uveitis and orbit and everything into one. Now, because diagnoses are made on low magnification, let's decrease the magnification and get into a little bit about what's happening here. Another thing that this could have been, but is not, is that if all of the acini were to be eliminated from the picture, and you were left with ductules, or most of the acini eliminated, you're left with ductules, and the myoepithelial cells proliferated, you need to look at the lymphoid population very carefully to make sure you don't have a low-grade lymphoma, which would be the pathology of the so-called Sjogren's lesion. Now, Daniel, if you wish, we can take a couple of minutes, I leave this at your discretion, and talk about the contemporary approaches of the difference between reactive inflammation and orbital lymphoma in the orbit, but I leave that up to you if you want me to go there, okay? But because we have other things that we were asked to discuss. So this is most likely not a Sjogren's lesion. Actually, the diagnosis is on the screen, but I will make it a bit easier for you. Another possibility that this could have been, if you look at orbital inflammations carefully, what happens if you get an orbital inflammation? Listen to the histologic findings. See if you can picture it. You can close your eyes if you like. You can meditate on the thing. Suppose you get chronic inflammation, and you have necrosis. And in addition to the necrosis, and by the way, you get granulomatous inflammation to the necrotic zones. And you have a vasculitis too. Now notice that I did not say you had granulomatous vasculitis. The constellation of the findings that I just described to you histologically, this is for another session, this is not for now. It's beyond the scope of this morning. I have just described to you Wegener's granulomatosis. I just want to highlight to you that Wegener's can start in the orbit and be limited to the orbit and not spread systemically. All right? But Wegener's is for another discussion. So let's go back to this one. Because this one we've already begun to discuss in a way. I lower the magnification for you, and you see acini and ductules. And then here, you see a structure. And also, over here, you see another one, more beautiful. So what are these structures? You just saw them in the uvea a couple minutes ago. Granulomas. So we have granulomatous inflammation of the lacrimal gland. And this was in a patient whom they suspected had sarcoid, and they deliberately did a biopsy of the lacrimal gland to see if they could find granulomas on which to enter the patient into a protocol. It's okay? I can't tell. Some response. Thank you very much. Okay. Do you have any questions so far on what we covered about the lacrimal gland so far? Yes, no? Questions? Okay, let's do a little bit more. Daniel asked me to cover some more on the lacrimal gland, so let's continue. He actually asked me orbit. The orbital surgeons can answer any question they like. It's okay. Okay. But for the rest, let's do another orbital case. It's all right? Now, here, I will tell you, I want you to look at this carefully. And I want to show you that in this area, you have many acini,